Welcome to this video. We will be talking about the different data types we have in Java. We have talked about them a little bit, but now let's look at them in more details. So there are 8 data types we have in Java. The first one is byte, and byte is the smallest one. It is only 8 bits of space, so you can store maximum of minus 2 to the power 7 in the negative side, so you can store maximum value of 128 in negative. So if you have minus 128, you can store it in byte. If you have minus 129, you cannot store it in byte. You need to look at the next one. The same thing is the opposite side. You can store only 127. So the maximum value you can store in a byte is 127. If you have larger, then you need to go to the next one, which is the short. The short can store 16 bits, and it can take a larger data than a byte. As you can see, 16 is double 8. So you can store 2 bytes. One short can store 2 bytes and can store more data. In terms of how you declare it, you declare short s or any variable you have here equal, and then you put the data. Now here in this example we have 30 underscore 000. Underscore is not necessary, but it makes thousands and numbers are more clear for the people. Here the byte, you can declare it as byte b equal, and you put the number there. Now when you do this declaration, if you choose a number that is higher than what byte can store, you will get an error on the compilation of your code. And the same thing for short. So the short is double the byte and can store more. And then the next one we have is end, which double the short or 4 times the byte, and can store up to 32 bits. And you can see now the data is big on the negative and on the positive side. The next one is long, which double the end. See all these differences. Why? Because you need different needs. You need to store a large number or a small number. It depends on what you need, and you can find out the right data type that will fit the number without overusing your memory for no reason. Because when you declare a variable, the memory is reserved for that variable. Now these are all integer numbers we have seen so far, starting from byte, short, and long. Integer means you cannot have a decimal point. You cannot have 100 plus point 100.25. You cannot have that. It has to be a whole number. This is why we have these two intelligent, important data types. One is float, which can store 32-bit, and it can store decimal point up to 7 decimal points. And we have double, we can store bigger than the float, twice the float, 64, and it can store decimal points up to 15 or 16 digits. Notice here the way you declare the float. You say float f equal, and then you put a number there. You need the f at the end. The f at the end will force the compiler to treat this one as a float, because any number with a decimal point by default it is double. It is double by default. But to force it to be float, you add the f at the end, uppercase or lowercase. So float, your variable name, whatever, you call it f, you can call it x or whatever, equal, and then the value, and then f in lowercase or uppercase. For the double, you don't need to have d or anything, because the default is double. And you declare it this way. So we had 4 integer data types, 2 floating point data types. One is float, one is double. Okay, and then we have one character now. Character is used for characters. You store A, B, Z, X, Y, everything. And it gives 16 space of memory. So the character has to be maximum 16. And the reason the 16, they looked at the Unicode, which is International Universal Code, to support all languages, Chinese, Arabics, and other languages. So they found the 16-bit is good enough to have all characters we have in the world. So that's how it is. So when you declare a character, you say char space, then you use a variable, whatever variable, equal, and you need a single quote here and single quote here, and then you put one character only inside, or use Unicode. We'll come to the examples later to have. So one character. Now if you put many characters together, you create a string. But in Java, string is a class, is not a primitive data type. And here we're talking about primitive data type, and the primitive means the basics data type. These data types are used to create something bigger. They call it data structure, where you create a linked list, hash, and so many different things. You link them together and you create a bigger data types, which they call it data structure. But we're not going to talk about it here. We'll talk about it in another course later. So the character is the one that you can use it to build string. String is multiple characters. The last one we talk about is the Boolean, and the Boolean is good for logical expressions. For example, if you want to say age more than 30, is age more than 30? The answer is what? Either true or false, depends on the person we're talking about. Depends on their age. So it has to be either true or false. Has only these two values that we can use. So this is summary of those 8 primitive data type that we use in Java program.